Good afternoon. My name's Russ. I'm a program director here at GlobeKick. I have the pleasure today of introducing to you Artyom Avanesov. Nailed it?
Thank you, Russ.
Nailed it. It's like I was in Russian. A neighbor here at Cowork Lisboa, and more than that, a true member of our tribe as a working digital nomad. In fact, Artyom will be hitting the road not too long after our departure from Lisbon, which is just 4 days from now. We're hoping to see him down in Austin, Texas early next year. Come to the Lone Star, get some cowboy boots, maybe a Lone Star beer or two. Jamie and I will work on that once you get to Texas. I hope you've had a chance to take a look at some of the program material that I sent on Artyom. If not, we'll throw a link at you that'll serve as a bio. Artyom has an amazing zen for travel and much practical experience freelancing from faraway places. As a graduate of Utrecht University of Applied Sciences, this man comes to us with technical experience both learned and earned in a number of different job functions. He's worked for huge firms such as IBM, nimble online retailers like Bol.com, and finds himself now working as a sole proprietor under his own banner of business, Caliibrate. 2 eyes in Caliibrate. Artyom focuses his UX consultancy on design for mobile and web, but remaining involved throughout the entire UX lifecycle of his projects. He believes design for mobile and web is as much about functionality as it is about aesthetics. But this man is talented beyond beliefs. So I'm going to hand it over so we can hear a bit more on how he approaches living as a digital nomad and finding the right clients. Thank you.
Thanks, Russell. It's a pleasure to be here. So a couple of weeks ago, Aliyah approached me and asked me if I would like to present to you guys, and of course I said yes. But when I asked her what she would like me to present about, she was like, oh, well, there's these 2 guys and a group of aspiring digital nomads, so talk about whatever you think will bring them one step closer to becoming digital nomads. So I thought long and hard about it, and what I want to talk about is one of the things that I wish someone had told me before I started this whole thing, and that is how do you get the clients that you want? So how do you get to pick your clients instead of just doing the work that comes to you? So a bit about me. I work as a UX consultant, as a user experience consultant, which means that I basically design apps for startups. Now, most of the startups I work with are based in the US, and I currently focus on the blockchain industry, which you are all familiar with by now because of Dan.
Yeah.
So, so I've been working as an independent consultant for about 2 years now, and about midway last year, I became really bored with the Netherlands, and I decided that I want to do a motorcycle trip from Lisbon to Bali. So currently my bike is in Graz in Austria, and I'll be visiting the US for a couple of months starting November. So I'm doing a little detour, but eventually we'll get there. I'm curious to know, who of you guys is actually intending to continue the travel after Marrakesh?
Me, for sure.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's on the radar. Some of us are kind of open-ended.
Yeah.
We don't have a ticket home.
Okay. Why?
Just kind of wanted to see what this experience brought me, and if I wanted to keep going, where I wanted to go. Maybe I would go back to the US for a month and plan, a bigger, fuller trip. But kind of using this to kind of test the waters to see if I could sustain the digital nomad life.
Yeah. Use the momentum and see if you can go forward.
Yeah.
Okay, that's cool. Well, the thing is, one of the things that I like most about this lifestyle is, the almost absolute freedom that you get. So you get the freedom to pick where you go and where you are, and also where you work, when you work, how you work, how much you charge for your product or services. But also, what kind of work do you do? So which clients do you work with? And I think that's so important to be able to pick your own clients instead of just assuming a passive approach where clients or where work comes to you and you just kind of do whatever you get. You know, it's very much in line with, you know, being able to pick where you work, you know, also picking who you work with and what kind of projects you work on. Because in the end, it benefits both you and your client. You're going to be working on something that you're passionate about, and you're going to give that, you know, extra step because you really believe in what you're doing, and that obviously benefits the client as well. So that's what I'm going to talk about. Of course, I'm going to do this in the context of UX design, so I provide a service, but I hope that you kind of pick some things up that you can also apply to your context and to what you do. Okay, so I meet a lot of digital nomads as I travel and work, and I always like to know, like, how do you go about acquiring clients? Like, how do you get your work? And most of the time, the strategies that I hear fall into one of the following three categories. So either, like the first one is converting an employer to a client. So instead of receiving a monthly paycheck, you start invoicing your employer. The second strategy I often hear is leveraging the personal network. So, you know, approaching people who know other people. And the third one is using online platforms such as Upwork and TopTal. Now, I quickly want to go through each of these and discuss the pros and the cons of each one. Now, none of these is better than the other, but each of these is appropriate in its own time. So you can actually use all of them as long as it suits, you know, where you are and how you go about your business. So converting a employer from a employer to a client has some very you know, it's a great way to start because you don't need to go out and search for clients. You know, you're already working for your client, and it's basically a matter of, you know, renegotiating your terms, and instead of you know, receiving a paycheck, invoicing them monthly. And it's also great because you're already familiar with the work, you're familiar with the company culture, you're familiar with the people that you work with, so, you know, the learning curve will be very flat. But it also comes with several disadvantages. One of them being is that you're now fully dependent on this one client. So imagine if the company goes bankrupt, or, you know, they find a replacement, or they stop paying you for whatever reason. You know, you basically lose your lifestyle because you don't have any other, or most likely you don't have any other revenue streams. Also, I noticed that a lot of people who work for their past employer, they don't learn how to acquire new clients, which again, you know, if you lose your one client, then you don't know what to do. And you know, it can be difficult to negotiate more favorable conditions because, you know, your employer has a preconceived idea of like what they want to pay you and, you know, the conditions that they provide. Whereas when you're doing freelance work and you find new clients, you can basically negotiate conditions with each new project. And okay, then there's the personal network. The personal network is great and is it's a very nice way to get clients if you have a very developed network. So if you know a lot of people that may know people that require your service. And it's also great because clients come to you. So you don't have to go out and look for you know, clients. Instead, you know, if someone needs an app, then they will somehow find their way to me. But then again, it can be very difficult if you don't have that network established yet. So if you don't know a lot of people that need your service, you know, you're going to have a difficult time getting projects. Also, there can be a problem if your network dries up. So what happens if you stop getting projects, or if it's a low season in your industry and you know, your skill or your service isn't required? And another con is that it's often like your location, your physical location is tied to the location of your network. So imagine you have a network established here in Lisbon, then it will probably be expected from you that you're also present here, which doesn't allow you to travel. And you don't really get to choose the type of work you do, you just get to pick from whatever comes to you. And then there's the online platforms such as Upwork, TopTal, you have Freelancer, and many, many more. And yeah, these platforms, it's how I started, and they have some great upsides, but also some drawbacks. So one of the upsides is that supply is super concentrated. So you don't need to search for contact details, or, you know, scour the internet, there's this one feed where all the jobs come in, where all the RFPs, requests for proposal, come in, and you just pick the ones that you like, and you try to get a project out of that. There's also a super high turnover in supply, so the feed is updated every couple of seconds or minutes. So if you don't get a positive response from one proposal, you can always try the next one a couple of minutes later. And if you have a good reputation on these networks, it's super easy to find work. But then there's also a lot of competition. It's not uncommon to see an RFP that gets between 30 and 100 replies. So you need to compete against 100 people, which can be difficult. You know, when some people are only charging like $5 an hour for their service. It's ridiculously low, but they're out there. So it's also very difficult to start if you don't have that reputation, if you don't have that 5-star review, and also, you know, one bad review can really ruin your career. So if you have one 5-star review and you get one 3-star review, you have a 4 on average, which really impacts your earnings and your potential to get clients. Also, rates are generally lower on these platforms, and of course, the platforms take a huge cut. I think it's between 10 and 20%, which is a lot. And that's pre-tax. And you're also, again, fully dependent on this one platform. So if it shuts down or if it gets hacked and you've invested years and years into building your reputation, then you basically have to start all over again. So the way forward. So what I like to do is I really like to kind of think about what type of companies that I want to work with, and then try and approach those and see if they need my service. So I do it in a couple of steps, and it's really important to see these steps as not a linear process, but an iterative process. So you have to learn to do each step of the way until you have the whole sales funnel down, and you can do it easily from start to finish. So it basically all comes down to these 5 steps: identifying your target market, finding your prospects, approaching your prospects, having a meeting, and then you do the kickoff and start working. So when you identify your target market, you want to be as specific as possible. So you really need to think about what type of companies do you want to work with. Do you want, or what type of work do you want to do? Do you want to make the world a better place, or do you just want to make a lot of money? That's something you need to think about. And you also need to think about what type of industry you want to work with. And it's always better to be a specialist rather than a generalist, because if you can choose between 2 people and one is a specialist in your industry and the other one kind of knows how to do everything, you're most likely to go for the specialist, right? So also you want to look at the type of business, what they're about, their vision. You want to see where they are based. So I really like working with US-based startups, for example. And you also want to know how much funding they have, because if they have too little funding or no funding at all, chances are they won't be able to pay for your service. And if they had more than 20 million in funding, then chances are that they already have a very developed in-house team and don't require contractors, right? You also want to look at the type of funding. So did they get seed funding, or did they get, was it an angel round, or are they having a Series A or a Series B? And you also want to know what stage their product is in the product life cycle. Now, how do you go about finding your prospects? So there are many ways to do it, but the main ones that have worked for me are databases. So you have these online databases such as AngelList, which specify exactly what companies do, how much funding they get. They even provide contact details in some cases. And you can also, so you have these very general databases such as AngelList, and then you also have industry-specific databases. So if you know that you want to focus on one particular industry, it's always better to go there, because it's going to be much more concentrated, and you're going to find your contacts easier. You also can go to to news websites. So if you want to work with tech startups, for example, a good place to start is TechCrunch, or there's so many tech blogs out there, or again, industry-specific tech blogs that you could visit, and you just read the articles and you read about like, hey, this company got like funding, or they just released a new update, and you're like, okay, well, why not reach out to them and see what they're up to, and if there's any synergy. You could also use forums and social media. There's a lot of companies listed there. And another one is venture capitalist websites, because they often list the companies that they are invested in, and oftentimes it also says what type of funding they got. So, you know, if it's a seed round, and it says how much they received in funding, then you can kind of get a sense of, you know, what your chances are approaching this company. So what are the different ways to approach your prospects? The first one's email, and I really like email because email is king, and it still works like much better than any other means. But there's also, of course, LinkedIn. So you can reach out through LinkedIn, through like private messaging, or you can get one of these paid subscriptions where you can in-mail anyone on the network. I've had success reaching out through Twitter. So I wrote someone a tweet and they actually replied. So you could try your luck there. But also a great way to get to know people is attending meetups and conferences. You know, I met so many people that helped me grow my business from meetups, and I even met clients at meetups. And you know, everyone who's interested in something just gets together and is there to mingle, and it's a great way to expand your network. So usually after, you know, when you identified your target market, found your prospect, and approached them, oftentimes so if you did that well, you get your first meeting, and you should kind of look at it as a job interview. So the first meeting is usually non-technical. You don't really discuss the project. It's more about who you are as a person, how you work. Like you can also you also want to ask the company what they're about, how they work. You want to know a bit more about the team and the product, and how they've been doing. It's more, you know, to see if you level and if there's a robust match. So yeah, after the first meeting, you usually have a second meeting where you go more into details on the activities that you'll carry out and the services that you provide. So it's more detailed. And you often also discuss pricing. Now, for pricing, there's a couple of ways to go about it, and I guess each person or each specialist has their own way. But I had identified four ways to price. So you have value-based pricing, which is the first one, and here you look at how much value you think your product or service will provide to that company. So, for example, if I design an app and I know that the app, or I guess that the app will will generate $1 million in revenues, and you know, them paying 10,000 euros for a project is, you know, it's a great investment because they're going to have this huge ROI. Then there's also industry-based pricing, where you kind of look at what is the industry average, what do other designers or specialists in my field ask for the service, and you take that. You can also look at how much you think your client is able and willing to pay. So some companies have a stronger cash position than others, and if you really want to work with a particular company, it would make sense to accommodate them in pricing as well. And then the final approach, which I really like, is thinking of how much you need to live a happy life. So how much money do you need, or how many days in the year do you want to work? How much do you need per day to live a comfortable life, and compute that and come up with a result. And what I usually do is a combination of the latter two. So, you know, how much would I need, and also what are the companies that I really want to work with able to pay. I think that's a great mindset, because you'll be happy and everyone's going to be better off. And then there's the kickoff, where you basically have everything agreed. You did the paperwork and you start with your activities. So I want to talk a bit about mindset, because I discussed all of these steps, from identifying your target market to actually getting your client. And I think having the right mindset in this is very important, because this whole thing that I just explained, it's not a linear process. Instead, it's an iterative improvement where you take step A and you really experiment with different styles until you really find the one that works for you. And then once you have step A down, you continue to step B, which in this case was finding prospect companies, and you really work on that. And once you have that down, you proceed to C. So it's not like something that you do and you just carry out this thing, like the process, and it works and you get your clients. No, it's really a matter of experimenting and trying it out until you find the approach that works for you. And that can take quite a long time, So it can be a bit frustrating, but as long as you don't give up and as long as you keep learning from the feedback you get, there's no chance of failure. So it's really an acquisition funnel with iterative improvement, and you should really work and focus on optimizing this acquisition funnel. And you should also look at this as a way of learning instead of making money, because I often hear people say when they ask me how should I start, I say, well, you could go to one of these online platforms. And they're like, well, for my current job, I earn 50 euros an hour, working at this design studio. And here I'll earn 30 euros at most. So I'll be losing 20 euros an hour if I switch to working as a freelancer. So that's an opportunity cost. But I'd argue that that's not a cost. It's an investment that you make, because what you're effectively doing is taking these 20 euros and investing them into your learning and development. And into familiarizing yourself with the process and familiarizing, gaining that reputation and building that portfolio that will eventually, at a later point in time, allow you to charge whatever you want and live this amazing lifestyle. So what you are is effectively a walking and talking business, and again, you should see all the investments of time and money that you make not as costs, but rather as investments. And as long as you keep learning and you're not afraid to fail, go out of your comfort zone, again, I'm sure you will do great. So that was it.
Do it. Woo!
Do we have time for questions?
Sure.
Can I ask you some questions? Do you guys have questions first?
I will let you go first because you might cover them.
I've got a few. I wanted to ask you about your experience or thoughts on social media advertising, like investing money into getting your service or business out across Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, what have you.
I guess it really depends on your business, and in my mind, social media advertising works better if you're providing if you have a product or like a program like you guys instead of a service. But I've heard from people who had great success on LinkedIn, and they really invest their efforts into developing their network there. So a friend of mine, for example, he invests in Google in Google ads.
Yeah.
So then he pays for the visitors that come to his website through Google search, and that's the way to go. And he's had great success doing that. So that is an approach. But again, you should really see what works for you. So go out and experiment. You should definitely try all these different approaches and see what's the ones that you're most comfortable with.
Mm-hmm. And I guess my last question is nativist or North America centric. Why do you like working with US-based companies? Why is this your target?
Yeah, I really like working with US-based clients and startups because they have their act together. It's great. Americans are very direct, which I love. They don't beat around the bush, or like the Dutch try to negotiate like 10 euros, you know, less for. It's I really like the directness, and Americans are super like U.S. startups. Americans is like it's a broad. U.S. startups are really open-minded, and they really have the freedom. They're not afraid to experiment, and I think that's a great mentality to have, and I enjoy working with them.
I have a question. Do you think like you need a strong kind of web presence? Like if someone does want to come to you or find you organically, like do you have a site that really explains everything you do and all your pricing, or is that something you can kind of figure out as you go? And wrapped into that, the pricing, is that something you kind of tweaked over time, or did you kind of do a lot of research and then figure out exactly what you were going to charge?
So the first question is, do you need a web presence? I think if you're doing remote work, your presence on the web is so important, because that's the only thing your clients get to see before hopping on Skype with you. You know, and it's really important to have that down, because you know it provides a good solid web presence, provides legitimacy, and it mitigates perceived risk associated with you know, working with you. And it's so important to, if for example in my case I have a website with a portfolio, it's so important to keep updating and improving your portfolio and kind of adapting and growing, and do that on a continuous basis. So yes, if you work remotely, it's really important to have an online presence. Then like with advertising, like I don't invest in SEO, because I prefer reaching out to clients that I want to work with, and I just send them a link. So I don't expect people to find my website out of the blue. But then again, there are people that rely more on, you know, on search and clients coming to them, and for them it would obviously make sense to invest more in SEO. Then your second question about pricing, I don't know. I think that the approach that I just explained, and the one that I'm comfortable with, is really in line with the lifestyle I'm trying to design here. You know, being able to go like work where you want, and do the type of work you want. Very much in line with that is determining what type of lifestyle you want to lead. So some people, they really like going to super expensive restaurants, eating out every day, or living in expensive cities. Other people are more like, they just go to Bali and spend a couple of €100 a month and just chill out and at the beach. So that really depends per person. So you need to determine what works for you and take it from there.
I've actually got a follow-up to Jenny's question or refinement. Do you feel that it's necessary to work under a sole proprietorship, like a business name like Caliibrate, rather than your own personal name? Is there like a real weighted difference to that?
So yeah, there is a difference, but then again, it's a perceived difference, because at the end of the day, it's if you're a sole proprietor, it's just you doing your work. Yeah. But the benefit of working under a company name is that you can at any point in time choose to hire people or expand your business. Also it depends on the type of clients you want to work with. So if you're looking to work with corporates and like larger clients or more established clients, then it maybe makes sense to present yourself as a company rather than a sole proprietor. But it really comes down to positioning and how you want to position yourself.